Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rachel, that is the R in the RK Stumblingbear, and I'm a reader and a writer. And I am back to give you my thoughts on the 6 stories that were nominated for the Nebulas this year. The caveat, I am not generally a big short story person. I like longer form novellas, novels, but I like reading the ones that are nominated for the Nebulas and the Hugos at least. So I'm just going to kind of go from my least favorite on up to my favorite. And for the least favorite, I have, or for these first 4, they kind of come out to a 3-star for me if you're using a rank, that sort of system. I have We Will Teach You How to Read. We Will Teach You How to Read by Caroline Yoakum. And this is basically a premise of an alien society is trying to give humanity their story, but they read very differently. The alien society can read multiple threads at one time, so that, imagine reading multiple books at the same time and you're understanding them. That's kind of what that premise is. And structurally, this is interesting, and it's set up because on one side you have a very basic, like, this is our story, and there's certain words. And then on the other side, you have like paragraphs that give more description and talk about why they're reaching out to humanity and how they're trying to teach humanity how to read multiple threads so their story doesn't get lost. You don't really find out much more about these aliens, just that they're at the end of their life and their children are dwindling and their children don't want to continue the reading, which is why they turn to humanity. It was okay. Like I said, I'm not much of a short story person, so when people go experimental, it usually doesn't work for me. Just saying. Then the next one was The Vampire, and that's with a star on the A, by P.H. Lee. Now this one I think would appeal very much to teenagers, because that's the mindset of this main character. All the actions that they do are very much in a stupid teenage mindset. For anybody who is a teenager, that is not to put you guys down. Science has found that when you enter teenage stage and you leave teenage stage, there are chemical processes that happen. And so teenagers really do have a completely different way of thinking than when they were children and then when they were adults. Hence the colloquial term, stupid teenage stage. Because your actions do not make sense to the adults in your life. And for me, this kind of felt like a train wreck in a way. Like, I could not look away as everything was happening. But it follows a premise of a young trans girl who's figuring out who she is and has developed her persona online on Tumblr. I never was a Tumblr person, so I don't get it. And then all of a sudden we have vampires, and vampires are like, no, you should always invite us in, and just because you want privacy, who cares? Our freedom of movement is more important. And our main character gets wrapped up into that. That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to make you go read this in order to find out more. Because in a way, it is actually kind of entertaining. In another way, it's also like, I'm cringing. I'm like, oh my gosh, those choices. Why did you do that? So, yeah. I then have Evan, A Remainder by Jordan Curella. And this is also about a trans character who has come out recently. And their husband's like, I love you, you're great, but I'm not gay. So if you're now a guy, this isn't going to work for me. And so the main character is now living on their own, and they're coughing up bones. And it just kind of goes back and forth as they start a new relationship, to then they're in a relationship with the skeleton that they've coughed up. I don't think I got what the author intended, but the message I kind of got was about identity and embracing who you are from the beginning and not thinking that you need to change yourself in order to be yourself. Because this skeleton that Evan has coughed up, he associates it with being all his female traits that he had quashed when he was a female. So that's why I'm saying I don't think I got what the author was trying to say. What came through to me was just different. I don't know. I'd love for somebody else to read this and share what they think of it. I definitely think that this could be an interesting discussion piece. I then have The Witch Trap by Jennifer Hudak. This is another one where the author's framing was experimental. So it starts off where we're following a witch who climbs into a house and gets trapped in a boot or an old shoe. And there's some historical precedence that this was a belief. And then we have a contractor who's doing work, finds it, and Elizabeth is like, oh, I'll hold on to it for right now. And then it starts changing format where now we have an academic or we have somebody else, and here's a bit of history. And that's where I got lost. I think if we had stayed with the witch in the shoe and then Elizabeth becoming attached, that would have been a much more compelling story for me. I realize that wasn't the author's intent. Again, I don't always jive with short stories. So those are the 4 that I would rank 3 stars. These next 2 I have as 4 stars. The next one I have is Why Don't We Kill the Kid in the Omulus Hole by Isabel J. Kim. So the premise of this is we have this great utopian society, except there is one child that has to suffer for everyone else to have a wonderful time. While this child is in a hole suffering, everything is great. If they die, then a tragedy strikes. There's other deaths around the city, tragic happenings, power goes out, chaos. And so the city begins fighting with itself of whether it should have a load-bearing child, as they call it, in the hole, so that everybody else can have a great life, or if they should just suck it up and deal with that life is sucky and bad things can happen to anyone and let the child not suffer. It's kind of like the trolley problem if you've ever studied psychology. Is one death worth all these other deaths? Or is one life worth all these other lives? Yeah, something like that. I got the point of this one. Also the bigger conversation of, we visit countries who we don't agree with how they're doing things, but we still visit them because they are exciting places to go. And if we're visiting them, does that mean that we agree with them? A couple different commentaries there. And then my favorite one of these nominations is 5 Views of the Planet Tartarus by Rachel J. Jones. And this is actually a flash fiction. It's less than 1,000 words. And I did understand the structure. It's split into 5 parts because there's 5 views. And they're short. In the first one, we have prisoners who are being transported to a world, and the pilot is hitting debris around the planet, and the prisoners are thinking, oh my gosh, you're awful, you're making this trip worse, when you're trying to kill us. And the pilot's like, yeah, we try to hit as much debris as possible every single time. And then you go to the next view of where the reason why they're there is because the government considers these guys rebels and needs to take them out of society. And then it goes through the process of how they're going to be imprisoned. And then you get the process of what it's like while they're imprisoned. And then the last view is getting to see the shuttle after 10 years and understanding that that pilot wasn't horrible, but that pilot was merciful. Definitely has a lot of commentary on prison systems and views of perspective. I really enjoyed this. Like I said, this is a flash. It's less than 600 words. So I ask everyone to go read this if they can. I am going to leave the links to all these short stories down below so that if any of them sound interesting to you, you can go read it. But I will be back when I have finished more of the Nebula categories. Thank you and have a great day.